guys. In this video, I wanted to give you just a little bit of insight on my bench training and recent things I've sort of been doing in my training to help out with me being able to find a more sustainable technique for myself that is not only strong, but is also very trainable and sustainable for me to basically overload consistently without getting hurt, because that's been something that I've been dealing with in the past in terms of my chest, shoulders, elbows kind of flaring up a little bit just due to inefficient technique. So I guess I want to just first of all go off here, just go over a little bit of my technique and what I'm thinking about. So first off here, when I am setting up and setting my upper back, I'm trying to pin my traps down into the pad, thinking of tucking my chin and keeping my neck long, while I'm trying to use the bar to basically put as much downward force onto my neck and my traps as possible to really create a strong, solid base with my traps. Basically, have a ton of vertical tension going down into the pad, and this is really important because we want to create as much of that vertical tension downwards into the pad to help with being able to have a ton of thoracic extension in our backs, providing as much mobility as we can actually tolerate. Like, I'm not super mobile, but the key is we want to have a lot of upper back tightness, and that's created through how we are setting our traps and our upper body into the pad, as well as leg drive into the ground. So as I am actually getting into this position, I like to set up sometimes with my feet up on the bench. I do find that it helps me get a little bit more of a set up on my upper back a little bit better. Then as I do go down, what I'm trying to do is trying to maintain a ton of leg tension and keep as much thoracic extension as I possibly can. And you can see that how when I'm lifting off, I keep my hips off the pad as I'm doing that, and that's so that I can actually put down a ton of direct tension into my upper back and have as much downward force as I possibly can as I do self-unrack the barbell. And as I am also self-unracking, and then I get over so first off, I'm thinking of putting my shoulders down away from my ears, depressing my scapula, so again, down away from ears, as well as pinching those shoulder blades together to help create and maintain the upper back tightness. And then I will you can see how my elbows, when I do unrack, you can see how they kind of go downward, and that is me depressing and retracting my scapula. And as I'm doing that, I want to set my hips down gently on the pad, kind of think of them sort of floating there to create a ton of tension in your hip flexors. That's going to basically reduce the chance of your butt coming off the bench. You're also going to be able to use leg drive a little bit more efficiently because your hip flexors will be fully engaged, and you'll be able to have a ton of tension in your upper back. Now, as I am going down with the barbell, what I'm trying to do as I initiate it is I'm trying to lead with my elbows down and then unscrew my elbows as I do press back and up towards my face. So you can see how I'm touching lower on my chest, and then as I am pressing up and back, what I'm trying to do is press sort of in a J curve, and that's done through thinking about unscrewing your elbows. I've talked about this in other videos, but you should have a degree of external rotation when you are going downward on the bench press, moving into internal rotation towards lockout. The reason why we want to do that is because we want to get our chest, triceps, and our shoulders all firing in synergy with each other. If you touch too high, you're too internally rotated at your shoulders, you're going to have a lot of that load placed onto your shoulders and your elbows, and that's actually a big reason why I was having a ton of shoulder injuries and chest irritation, was because I was flaring my elbows way too much. I wasn't thinking about leading with it and having a lower touch point. Because where the touch point wants to be is we want to basically push our sternum as much as possible, and then lower down the barbell to that sternum in a controlled manner. But you can also see here that my elbows are slightly in front of the bar. And from a side view, we want to have our elbows either slightly in front or directly stacked underneath. In general, if you have a more close grip or you have a longer range of motion, your elbows are probably going to be a little bit more in front of the bar. Whereas if you have a shorter range of motion, you're more of a wide arch, you're going to have your elbows more in line with the bar. But you can see that regardless, my elbows do get back and underneath the bar as I am pressing up. So again, two big cues I've been using for that since this has been a really big issue for me has been thinking about leading with my elbows down to the bench, and then as I am pressing up and off the bench press towards lockout, I'm thinking of unscrewing my elbows and allowing them to flare through mid-range, because that's how we get all the muscles firing to get together, and basically we can move the most amount of weight. You can also see how with my leg drive, it's pressing back and down into the pad. Again, you want to use that leverage that you created from the setup to help with your bench press. So I'm going to pull up another video here where basically it shows me doing this also. This is a little bit of a closer grip. So on here again, I didn't have my feet up on the bench pad. This is an example of how you would do it without it. But again, you can still see here, when I do set up, I am setting up on the back of my neck. I am pressing down into the pad a ton with using my legs to really drive that home, and I'm using this bar to sort of help me leverage myself down into the pad. You can also see there when I'm doing that little shaky thing, I'm thinking about like depressing and retracting my scapula, thinking that long neck, tucking my chin. As I unrack the bar, I want to maintain that tons of leg tension. You can also see here again, as I am depressing and pulling those shoulders away from my ears. Also here, I am thinking about squeezing with my pinkies really hard. Something that a lot of people do struggle with on bench press is knowing exactly how to grip the bar. And they'll bias a little bit too much pressure onto these two pointer fingers. We actually want to grip low in the hand around about this part of our hand. And we want to squeeze with our pinkies. And the reason why we want to do that is because we'll be able to better use the triceps through lockout. This also, again, will kind of help with leading with the elbows and then unscrewing the elbows, as you get more towards lockout. To really use, again, all those muscles, shoulders, triceps, chest, the prime movers of the bench press, all in synergy. You can see I set my hips down lightly on the pad, leading with my elbows, and I'm thinking about unscrewing the elbows as they go towards lockout. I'm also thinking of actively reaching my chest up to meet the bar, and that is going to, the only way that happens is if you are maintaining that constant leg tension and upper back tightness to really think about your chest meeting the bar. If your legs lose any of that tension, you're going to what's called dumping of the bar, which is basically where if you are going on your chest, what happens here is instead of the shoulders being stacked, you're going to see that the barbell will sort of start to shift downwards onto the chest. Shoulders will roll forward, and that will make you lose leverage. It will also place more stress on your shoulder joints, and you'll lose power. So it's really important to make sure you're always constantly fighting for that upper back tightness and tension. And I also do recommend for most people, because of that fact that dumping the bar is pretty common, most people should have a relatively soft touch with minimal sink, because a lot of times people will have, so basically it's a risk to reward thing and a technique trade-off. But I found that for most lifters, it results in a little bit more inconsistency with bar path and with technique if you are using a soft sinking or a sinking touch instead of a soft touch, just because there's more chance of your elbows rolling forward, you dumping the bar off of your chest, and then having to refight to regain that position. It's also, in my experience, I've seen that the soft touch seems to be a little bit more trainable. You can generally tolerate a lot more training volume than with a sinking bench press, and I think it's because of that. However, the one thing about it is that if you can actually maintain your shoulder position and not have your elbows roll forward on the sinking touch, you tend to potentially get a little bit more power off the chest. But I think that for most lifters, you want to prioritize technique, stability, having that consistent touch points, always keeping a tight upper back, lots of tension in our legs the entire time, and really just maintaining that upper back and sternum position to meet the bar and not have to rely on power and having to have things be really uberly consistent. So hopefully this was a little bit helpful. Just some cues I've been working on with my bench press setup, and it's been helping out a lot. And one other big tip for bench is I think that people need to prioritize smaller increases block to block. Like I'm talking 2.5 to 5 pounds like per block, because that is very consistent progress. If you put that over like a year, like 2.5 to 5 pounds per month is 30 to 60 pounds on your bench press, which is significant. So that's just one other thing I think is important with just approaching bench press. But hopefully this video was helpful. If you guys liked it, please let me know in the comments down below. And if you have any questions, just ask them to. I'll be happy to answer.